Welcome to our year-end edition of This Week in Missouri Politics. We are joined by our guest we've had on for the last 10 years now.
Is it 10?
Of end-of-the-year shows. Now, United States Senator Eric Schmitt, welcome back to the show.
Great to be back. It's like a Christmas ham and eggnog. It's a holiday tradition.
I like it. It's like a Christmas story almost. You have the pudgy guy with the parted hair. You know.
10 years. I guess that's right.
Merry Christmas.
Merry
You got
Christmas.
the family all set for Christmas this year?
Oh, yeah. We're ready. It'd be nice to be home. I go back and forth every week anyway, but to have a couple of weeks at home for Christmas will be nice. Yeah.
So when you're out there, you've been filing lawsuits against Biden censorship. Now you're filing, I guess, laws about it. Break that down. I think people hear that. It gets lost in the background. But literally, you have documentation that anybody could go read for themselves where the Biden administration was influencing these tech companies and folks inside the government during COVID influencing these tech companies. I mean, that's serious stuff that should be known.
Yeah, and it's much broader than people ever anticipated. When we originally filed the lawsuit, we had some indication. I mean, they were publicly saying, hey, we are flagging these posts for Facebook to take them down, which sort of sent some red flags. But the more we got into discovery, the actual documents and the emails, you saw how widespread this was. And so that case is a landmark case and ultimately get decided by the Supreme Court, and it should. But we've, carried that on in the Senate to say, filed a couple of bills. One is to say that if you're a big tech company like that and you're engaged in that kind of censorship activity, you don't get the Section 230 protections, meaning right now they're immune from lawsuits. You're no longer, the idea is you're a platform where people can speak their mind or you're not. You don't get to have the legal advantage if you're not anymore. The second piece, which goes right to the Missouri versus Biden issue, is that, government can't obviously censor speech. It violates the First Amendment. But if they do, as an individual, you have an individual right of action against that bureaucrat that's involved in it. And it's meant to be a deterrent. And instead of one AG or two AGs suing on that, you have an army of people who've been, their rights have been violated. They can sue the government. All of this is meant to basically get the government to back away from a very authoritarian style of weaponization, right? Like the idea, one of the things that makes America exceptional, what we mean by American exceptionalism is we believe in individual rights, right? And we believe that you should be able to speak your mind, and the government doesn't have any business telling you what you can say or hear.
This is not a byproduct of a Department of Justice, that Republicans have passed these tough on crime laws, and they've built a monstrosity they can't control anymore. If you're a tech company and the government can arrest Donald Trump for just hack charges, I think you'd be inclined to do what they want. I mean, there's not that much different than Putin, some of the stuff they do.
Well, that's right. If you are threatening an investigation or you're threatening to go after them for antitrust issues, I mean, that is the heavy hand of the government. And so for me, look.
And now they're under strain. They'll do whatever they want, and folks are afraid to stand up to them because they could be next.
Yeah, and if you kind of paid any attention to my whatever, not many people do, but there is a consistent chord in my time in public life, whether it was the Senate Bill 5 when I was in the state Senate or my time as Attorney General or now in the Senate. Going after this kind of government overreach, right? I just think people ought to be able to live their lives. And the government and people that have a tendency to aggrandize their power when they're there and they want to exercise it in a way that our founders were trying to protect people from, right? It's why you spread out power, you had the separation of powers, First Amendment protections. And so I've been consistent with that. And now, in this new place, the United States Senate, there's an opportunity, I think, to get some of those things done and build coalitions, which, by the way, don't have to be and shouldn't be just Republican. I mean, these are ideas, I think, that can bring people together.
Speaking of your new job at the United States Senate, you have an entire foreign policy set of issues to deal with. Start with Ukraine. The president of Ukraine come to Washington, essentially asking for more Missouri tax dollars.
It didn't move anybody. They've already gotten $112 billion. They're asking for another $60 billion. We've been in briefings where they might need another $100 billion next year. And the problem with that is it's a lot of money, and I try to put myself in the taxpayer point of view, right? There's no articulation of what victory looks like. There's no, support from the European allies to the extent there's no accountability. And I think it was striking in that we were there listening to the president of Ukraine talk about the sovereignty and the importance of territorial integrity in his own borders. And yet we have a president in this country who doesn't care about the sovereignty of our own border. We have a southern border.
If the president would secure our border, would you help secure Ukraine's?
I mean, I think these issues should be separate. I just don't think they have identified a way to victory. So I've been very skeptical on that.
It kind of is antithetical, though. I grew up in the 80s with President Reagan saying, tear down this wall. It almost is like Russian bad. You should do whatever they want. America should make them not want. Is there not a part of you that's like a little bit like, well, when I grew up, we're just supposed to fight the Russians. That's what we do.
Well, I think that, look, I think the American people have gotten tired of blank checks for endless wars. And so I view my job as to be to ask the tough questions and make decisions. I mean, Missourians are pretty independent-minded, right? And I think that if you're going to come and ask for that amount of money, and it is amazing, the attention that issue gets in Washington. I campaigned, 3 times in 6 years statewide office. I get around the state still. Hardly anybody comes up to me and say, you know what we really need to do? We need to send another $100 billion to Ukraine. No, what they're talking about is every time I go to the grocery store, I'm hit with, inflation. Every time I do this or that, because we spend way too much money in Washington and they've declared war on domestic energy production. And when you do those two things, the cost on everything that goes up. So I think the American people want us to tackle those issues.
Let's talk about Israel. A lot of folks I know, maybe it's because it's newer, but they do talk about the Israeli conflict. Yeah. You've been pretty outspoken to stand with Israel.
Yep, absolutely. Well, again, here's a scenario where on October 7th, terrorists came in and did the unspeakable. We were in a private screening centers. I felt an obligation to go. It was 52 minutes of footage that the terrorists actually on their GoPros and closed caption had of the atrocities that were committed. And some of those images I'll never get out of my head, right? But I thought it was important to be there. Israel has a way to deal with Hamas. They need to eradicate Hamas, and they need the diplomatic space and the support they need to go do that. And they can go do that. So again, the request for Israel is very different than the other. And I think that we have to be complex enough, right, to understand that these are separate issues, which is why I've advocated deal with the border separately, deal with Israel separately, deal with Ukraine separately, and have a real debate. It's supposed to be the most deliberative body in the world, but we don't have a lot of debate on that. I think it would surprise people.
You can define success for Ukraine as running the Russians back into their territory from 2 years ago. And people say, well, can you do that?
Right.
With Israel, can you eradicate Hamas?
Yes.
What does that look like?
They can if the Democrats don't cave to the left here. I mean, you see...
well, that's changing, isn't it?
It is, and the dynamic in Washington is changing. They're getting a lot of pressure, and they're starting to back away from Israel. I think that's a huge mistake. But it does go and show, I mean, so you had the university presidents testify. Right. You have college students chanting from the river to the sea. This is all, Scott, the fruit of the poisonous tree of cultural Marxism. What do I mean by that? This idea that you separate everybody by oppressor and oppressed, you're in an oppression matrix, and no matter your argument, the truth is decided by the color of your skin. This is why, I've had an amendment that ended up, rooting out DEI in our military. I've got an abolish DEI offices legislation. This stuff is poison. It divides people. It separates people. This is a country we're supposed to come together. And so the problem now is when people look at the Israel issue with Hamas, you have people taking sides with Hamas on this because of identity politics.
People
and
that
this is what
Hamas would
happens.
kill in the streets would literally hang for their lifestyle. Want to protest for him. It's bizarre.
It is very bizarre.
Is Joe Biden the last Democratic president that will stand with Israel?
Probably, and he's fading himself. So I don't know. I hope not. As an American, I hope not. But the
looks
left,
like where the trajectory is going.
But the left, listen, they're the ones running the White House. I mean, you've got staffers writing open memos saying that there needs to be, this ceasefire before Israel can do what it needs to do. So, this is a result of Hamas's terrorism. And Israel has every right to deal with that. I mean, if somebody was trying to tell the United States of America how we were going to deal with something like that, I wouldn't be listening. We got to do what's right for our country, and so does Israel.
Talk about a guy that has no problem telling what he thinks is good for America, Donald Trump. You've come out and supported him. Look, I tell you, I think rational people can disagree on who the Republican nominee should be. I think folks have a very right to think of it. But whatever you think, in Missouri, Donald Trump is remarkably popular.
Absolutely. And we stay in pretty regular contact, and I'm excited about his second term. I think he will come in, and I've talked a lot about dismantling the administrative state. I think he's going to come in like a wrecking ball, and that's important.
If he gets back in, he'll be a wrecking ball, right? He'll have nothing to lose.
By the way, so here's what that means. These agencies that go off and do things, whether it's the weaponization we've talked about already, or just because they can't pass a law, just with the stroke of a pen do something. This is the administrative state. These folks think these are unelected folks. They're not accountable to anybody. I think he would, because he couldn't run again, I think he'd be a real reformer in that space, which is why I support him as one of the first senators in the country to do it, because I just think Missourians support him. Think of the difference between when he was president, wage growth was up, everything was more affordable, we had a secure border, we were energy dominant. We don't have any of those things anymore. So I think when people are confronted with that choice, in about less than a year now, I think he's going to be the 47th president of the United States.
Boy, it does feel like it's trending that way. I mean,
Yeah, you look at the polls, and
it's a little bit anti-Biden, but it's a lot. Okay, they're arresting the guy every 3 days. What's going on with this? I mean, there is a momentum for Trump, but a lot of it is, I mean, you're going to be able to say, are you better off 4 years ago? I mean, there's going to be a legitimate question, guys. Which 4 years are better for you? And I don't know that many people that can say these current 4 years.
Yeah, and people are, voters are smart. They can discern the difference between, their lives when he was president and what's happening now. And you see a lot of division, you see high inflation, you see we're less safe as a country. The withdrawal from Afghanistan was a disaster, which, by the way, is what led to Ukraine. And by the way, emboldens China. And by the way, emboldens all these folks, I mean, Iran would have never done what it did by funding Hamas to go after Israel if Donald Trump were president. That's the truth. We didn't have any of these, escalations when he was president.
I'll tell you, there's some folks that you could say are smart or not smart, but St. Louis Cardinals, it's been a terrible year. I have to think your first year in the Senate has been very disappointing to see how the true metric of success has went. They've signed some guys.
Yeah.
What do you think?
So I don't know what the prevailing wisdom on this is, but I think Kyle Gibson and Lance Lynn. Now Lance Lynn has to cut down on that home run rate, right? Busch Stadium will help with that because it's become much more pitcher friendly.
They've got guys in jerseys now.
But here's what I'm saying. The part of the problem last year is they had no stability in that rotation. I think in the back half, the back half of that rotation, they get innings. Sonny Gray is an underrated one in my view. He was top 3 in MVP or in Cy Young voting. He was top 3 in wins above replacement. He's a good sign. I would like them to go out via trade and get another frontline starter. I don't know if that'll happen, but I like the moves so far. They have to have a stable rotation. That's always been the Cardinals' sort of MO.
Yep.
Is you get a lot of innings.
Dating back to Dave Duncan.
Yeah, and I think offensively, they've got a good lineup. We'll see. I don't know if they're done yet, so.
Feels like a bullpen arm's coming, maybe?
Yeah, they need a bullpen remake for sure. Because look.
Give me the prediction right now. Obviously, this is Christmas time. Will the Cardinals be back in the... Will we have our red jackets on for a playoff show in October?
God willing, yes.
I want to say yes. My heart says hell yes, but my head questions.
But you're right about the bullpen. They need, and I think they will. Look at the teams that make deep runs. They got stable starting pitching, and they got a bunch of flamethrowers coming in the fifth.
Well, Eric Schmitt, thank you so much for joining us for end of the year show. Merry Christmas to you and your family.
Merry Christmas.
And we'll be right back with our opinion maker panel. Steve Butz joins us after this.
For more than a century, the St. Louis Carpenters Union has shaped our communities. Through trusted alliances, we deliver skilled professional craftspeople while our business partners provide the kind of quality jobs that keep our economy humming. It's a blueprint that has worked since 1882. Turning Missouri into a right-to-work state stalls progress, wipes out jobs, and kills momentum. Right to work is wrong for everyone. Let's keep Missouri moving forward. Visit carpdc.org to learn more.
Data captured by our state-of-the-art monitors helps us pinpoint the timing and location of severe weather more accurately and respond to trouble more quickly. Ameren Missouri's investment in smart technologies like this is one way we're improving reliability and restoring power faster than ever. Responding to trouble before trouble hits. That's energy at work. Ameren, Missouri.
Welcome back to our year-end edition of This Week in Missouri Politics, our last opinion maker panel of the year. Representative Steve Butz from South City, St. Louis, welcome back to the show.
Scott, it's a pleasure. Thank you.
Pride of North County, Raychel Proudie, thank you for joining us.
Always a good time. Thank you.
Brett Dinkins, Victory Enterprises, thank you for making the time.
Thanks for having me.
And Casey Burns with Leadbelt Strategies. I am most grateful, obviously, for you being here. Happy birthday and welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Steve Butz, let's start with you. Biggest stories of the year. How do you get around I-70 being the biggest story of the year? The rebuilding of this road that is a bottleneck to the middle of the state.
No, I think it is the biggest story, and we've done some good things in the legislature, spending some general revenue on a project that just has to be done. If you're on 70, it's not just for Missourians, it's for the entire nation. Between the Rocheport Bridge and we're going to be working on I-70 for a long time. So those of us that travel to Jeff City, we may be taking alternate routes for a few years.
Come out and enjoy, see beautiful Lynn. Go through Herman.
Hey, I'll go through Herman. It is good, but no, in all seriousness, between passing the gas tax increase, the money's going to be well spent. It has to be done. Fixing that S-curve through that Wentzville area is mission critical.
Oh, man.
It is mission critical.
Brett Dinkins, you drive that road ever so often. It is truly a bottleneck. I mean, you don't need traffic studies to know you could put a speed limit of 70, and you may go 70 at 2 in the morning, but for the most part, during the day, it's not, you can't drive 70 miles an hour on 70.
No, you better leave yourself a couple hours of wiggle room because you really never know how long that drive is going to take, and if you get stuck behind 18 semis that are all stuck on the way. And so I'm really excited to see that fix. I think the improvements going on across the state in roads, bridges, infrastructure is going to be big, not just for I-70, but in the rural communities as well.
Casey, even folks from Bonne Terre will benefit from opening up the artery in the middle of the state.
Absolutely. I mean, Missouri's in the heartland of the country, and that I-70 is essential for interstate commerce and a lot of industries that come through our state and are essential to Missouri.
Raychel Proudie, I mean, I'm sure it's a little frustrating. The rest of us in the state pretty much pay for our services from your district in St. Louis. But this is money that I think even your district will appreciate being spent outside St. Louis.
Absolutely. It was an absolute privilege to serve on budget. In addition to which, it was an absolute privilege to serve on the conference committee for these funds to make sure that they were baked in and that we would have them. I won't echo everything everyone has said on the panel, but they are absolutely right. This was money well spent and likely the biggest story in Missouri politics this year.
Brett, let's talk about Mizzou.
Yeah, of course.
I mean, the football team's huge season is great, but it's really more than that. It's the AAU stabilization. Other campuses have all this protest going on. Those kids are just going to school. I mean, Moon Choi, leadership matters. Yeah. It's came in and changed the game.
Well, you know, I went to Mizzou for undergrad and graduate school, and I've seen several variations of leadership throughout the college, but Moon Choi has done more than anyone in recent history to really stabilize the university, but also bring it forward into the future. I have not heard from anyone on campus, whether students or faculty, that are unhappy with the type of leadership he's providing. He's really won that support and been able to implement real change, and has really brought Mizzou to the forefront again.
Steve Butz, I mean, one of the biggest stories here is Mizzou. I mean, the football team, and it always is. It can make a great year worse, better. It can make a bad year worse. But really, there's a whole sea change. And Mike Moon came out, and said, you better make sure you're paying Choi right to keep him.
Yeah, so Dr. Choi, just to echo those sentiments, you know, he's well-liked, and certainly he's raised the status of the University of Missouri, which helps UMSL, my alma mater, everything in the system. But to think, as a lifelong Mizzou fan, you always get ready to be disappointed when the big game comes. It didn't happen this time. We're actually going to the Cotton Bowl. It just doesn't happen that often. And the story of Cody Schrader to me is, I mean, it's Rudy come true, who actually gets in the game and carries the ball. I mean, it's an amazing story.
Raychel Proudie, Mike Moon, maybe an unsuspecting person sound the alarm, though. We all love everything's going on well. Those curators let him go. That's a problem.
It's a huge problem. You don't, let go of stability when it's there. And I'll be remiss if we didn't give a huge shout out to the state's highest paid employee, which is the football coach, right?
Sure, he's a winner.
He's got to be, 1 year older than I am. He's definitely earning his salary.
Yep.
The morale on campus, and it's these things that matter, right? The morale on campus is high. We're going to beat Ohio. And so I'm looking forward to that.
Tracy McCreary.
That's right.
I mean,
that's right.
But still, we're talking about the year. What a great year. What a great story. End of the day, if you're a curator and you're looking around and he's the lowest paid college president from any state that touches us, if you let him go, you probably should quit, right?
Look, you've got to pay quality staff if you want to keep them. And I think Dr. Choi is better than we deserve, honestly. He's been fantastic. He's done great things for Mizzou. I think that his pay should be commensurate with that.
Mm-hmm. Brett Dinkins, there was a conservative caucus.
Yeah.
That spent a lot of time on the Senate floor. Now there's a Freedom Caucus. I don't know if there's still one or the other. I'm not sure how it goes, but you've got now a list of senators, some term limited, some coming back, that are now part of a Freedom Caucus. What will this mean for the Missouri State Senate?
Well, I imagine it means not a lot gets done. I can't really quite follow this iteration of it. I know it, allegedly had disappeared and now it's back, but they have some affiliate members who aren't even in the Senate, and so we'll see what comes. But I think this means really legislatively that things that have consensus might have a chance of moving, but any legislation you see this year that doesn't start with some consensus will be dead on arrival.
Steve Butz, I mean, you get to sit over in the House chamber and look over. I mean, if you're a Democrat senator, you're like, yes, where do I contribute to help you guys? Let me get some Gatorade, right?
It's correct. I mean, just to think that this relatively small group of individuals in the Senate have whatever they call themselves. To me, it's basically they're Republicans. I mean, they just don't want to believe that politics is the art of the possible. And for them to just continuously put up roadblocks, even in their own party, much less extend an olive branch to the other side. We have to work together to get things done. These guys don't like doing that.
So you're saying go get them, woke Republicans?
Go get them.
Casey Burns, it is an interesting thing. I think sometimes people make more of it than it is. There was filibusters in the Senate before Jim Lemke.
Absolutely. There have been filibusters in the Senate since the Missouri Senate has existed. I think we'd be remiss, though, to not talk about the inner workings. If you saw the Twitter feeds yesterday, how education reform became such a prevalent topic within the Freedom Caucus.
Is it just true that no one can defend these worst superintendents anymore? So many people had their corn man moment, like I have, that you just can't defend this anymore.
I think it's gotten to a point where a lot of folks are coming together to look at ways to solve the issues we're seeing in public education. And I was glad to see Senator Carter come out and say yesterday, hey, if this means parents have more choice, then sign me up.
I can't wait for all the I told you so's from people that dog Senator Carter to me. I get to, well, my Christmas gift to them is I told you so, told you so, told you so. But seriously, I mean, this is one of those things where I don't know that this group ever wasn't an active part, but I mean, if you're a Democrat, you're like, sweet.
To a certain extent. Obviously, there are things that we would like to see moved, and that's a barrier.
But there's more things you don't want to see moved, and they don't get moved. If they're
Oh,
on the
absolutely. I mean, and we'll take it. We'll certainly take it. But to Representative Butts' point, you know, this small group of individuals just holding things up for nothing more than their own, you know, sound bites in soapbox is really, you know, it's not why we're there. It's not why our taxpayers, you know, are paying for us to be there. And so it's a little bit annoying, but also it's a bit refreshing when you're a Democrat to kind of sit back and watch the
You have to deal with your own extremists as well. And I mean, it's
Fair
probably
enough.
nice when you're dealing with yours to see, well, look at that. We don't, you know, we're not the only ones here.
For sure.
Prediction. Does the Freedom Caucus have more wins by the end of its time than the Conservative Caucus did?
No. I mean, I just don't see
Prediction.
it.
Do they have more success than their previous generation?
I'd say it's going to be very similar to the Conservative Caucus that we saw in years past.
What do you think? That was a very conservative estimate of what's happening. What's going to happen? Will they be more successful?
No.
What do you think?
Absolutely not. They're in the super minority.
You can speak from experience. You,
I do.
You know what's
what
up
it
there.
likes to feel like.
Right.
All right, Representative Proudie, I have never had to fish an opinion out of you. There's a story that I did an interview with Sarah Unsicker this week. She is now not running. She's your colleague in the House, not running for Attorney General. To say it's weird feels like an understatement. What's going to happen?
I believe she'll be removed from caucus.
Now, when someone asks you why you're removing her, what is the elevator, 2-sentence reason you're removing her?
So when Representative Butz and I were elected the 100th General Assembly, we were coming into an issue with Representative Burns, Bob Burns, where he called into a radio show. The host of said radio show liked to say things like the N-word and other disparaging things, sexist things, homophobic things, things that are contrary to our platform as Democrats. At the time, Representative Unsicker was on leadership and took that vote. And if we're holding each other to the same standards and accountable, we can't, you know, allow for her to stay given the circumstance when the caucus not only put Bob Burns out once, but twice.
Okay, there's Bob Burns, a great man. I mean, he worked for a living, those Teamster hands, delivering those cases of beer. I think a lot of folks were like, wow, that's pretty harsh. And I asked Sarah on Monday when I interviewed her, Bob Burns was on a show promoting a veterans charity. Should have been there. I'm not a Democrat, I don't have the right to say, but however, you know, she didn't say anything for him. Is it almost like the woke will come around and get you too?
I think, you know, if you're going to hold someone to a standard, then you should be held to an equal standard. I'm not privy to all the details of Representative Unsicker's affiliations or what exactly led to this series of events. But if this was applicable to Representative Burns, then why wouldn't it be applicable to her as well?
When Robespierre went to the guillotine, nobody felt sorry for Robespierre, right, Chris?
Well, you know, I don't have a dog in this fight. She's a rep in the extreme minority, and she had no chance of AG, so it doesn't impact me or my business at all. But I will say what I have seen looks like we're witnessing someone who is having a bit of a mental breakdown, and I hope that she figures that out, because some of the things she was claiming and the politicians of past gone by that she was bringing up, I just think that's not reflective of someone in a good state of mind. And so I really hope that whatever's going on, she can move past it in a productive way.
Steve, is there room for her to sort this out with your colleagues and try to put this toothpaste back in the tube?
Well, there might be room, because I'm going to echo Brett's comments there. I feel like I know Representative Unsecker pretty darn well for several years, and to me this does have that something is just not right, seriously wrong. The press releases the last couple days out of her office, so I just hope we, her family, friends, can get her the help I believe that she really does need. So, but in terms of caucus, we're going to meet and talk about it soon. So,
is there room for her to put the genie back in the bottle here?
With me personally, no.
Gotcha. What do you think your majority of your caucus members are?
The same place. I think the commentary specifically on the late time Swyke and Cora Faith Walker was a little bit much. The saying that a victim, an alleged victim of sexual assault, was playing the victim card is a bit much for individuals in our caucus. She makes me uncomfortable, and with me, it's a done deal. But we'll see what happens.
Brett Dinkins with a minute left, 2 on the week.
Well, Casey referenced earlier the Twitter commentary. It was all about Doug Ritchie's education bill. And so I'm going to say it has the most momentum heading into session. A lot of commitments were made online. And so I'm going to say Doug Ritchie and his education reform legislation won the week.
Who won the week?
I'm going to say Mike Henderson from the Leadbelt, near and dear to my heart. We saw that Senator Elaine Gannon is not running for re-election, and that makes Mike the front runner to take that seat.
I thought he was going to say me. Who won the week?
The Missouri Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. I'm a little bit late, but I think the appointment of classroom teachers, school principals, school superintendent, state representative, senator, Dr. Carla Esslinger was an excellent choice. She's a teacher's teacher, but she's not going to take any mess. As a certified teacher and school counselor myself, I couldn't be more pleased.
I think they're about to throw some babies out with the bathwater if they didn't appoint somebody of her stature to that job, right? I mean, right. Desi's future was pretty dadgum bleak until they announced her.
Her resume is just, she cannot be denied, and I think I can't wait to see what she does to develop the department.
And I think there's going to be some change. I mean, I think she's not one that has her head in the sand here. There's going to be some things change, but I think she has the credibility to put those changes in. I mean, who won the week, Steve?
I'm going to say, bring it home close to St. Louis, Circuit Attorney Gabe Gore. Yeah. Governor Parson made an excellent appointment. He made the announcement he's going to run for a full term. So, kudos to him.
Isn't that a big deal to offer that stability?
It's a huge,
it's a big deal to the business community.
The It affects every level of the state. Certainly affects this area. I give him a lot of credit because he's making a lot of personal sacrifice to do this.
I'm going to say my old friend Kevin Gunn. He came in, a former public servant in a bunch of different roles, now working for the fine folks over at Evergy. I think he won the week. I want to personally always take a minute at the end of the year to thank you. Thank you for watching, clicking on a video, liking, disliking a post, a retweet or whatever. Thank you guys so much. It makes it very much worth doing to have viewers like you. Thank you very much, and we will see you in 2024 for This Week in Missouri Politics.
This Week in Missouri Politics is sponsored by the Missouri Automobile Dealers Association, Ameren, Spire, and the United Electric Cooperative.